Okay, first of all, hello there, comment section. I'm aware already of the objectively terrible camera that I have. I, number one, I am a bit on the lower side of the income pool. I am trying to fix it. I'm not happy being there. I'm not also content to stew in malcontent. I am working on basically selling toys via Amazon. I just sent a bunch of Kurumi Tokusai toys from Data Live off to Amazon to bring in a bunch of revenue, but of course, I've got a whole bunch of other conflicting goals with upgrading this goddamn camera system. Like, first of all, I want to head north to Canada because I'm so pissed off at Apple as a company for all their anti repair shit that I want to learn how to fix their devices just out of pure spite for them. And there's a Canadian that will teach me micro soldering and how to repair Apple devices. And so I'm heading to the Lonsdale Quay up there in Canada as a plan of ours to stay at the hotel for 4 days and, take this course with this Canadian instructor up there. And it's going to take about $3,000 as far as the trip is concerned. We've already got a third of it together. I just switched, banks and everything. So I've got a whole bunch of other shit to, take care of and everything before I get there. And then there's a bunch of things like a couple credit cards that I have to fucking pay off completely, and everything. And they were content with my minimum payments for a while, but I overbooked as far as inventory is concerned, and so my creditors will get their money eventually, but it's going to be a while, as I that inventory is basically churned through and I sell it in my store. And so I just boxed a bit of it up and sent it on to Amazon and everything. And so my financial situation's a bit complicated. There's a lot going on. There's many moving parts and everything, and I'm in debt, and it will be paid off eventually. But for now, I'm just waiting until I churn through the inventory that's stuck. So I'm in a bit of trouble, and so that camera system is gonna be dog shit for quite a while. You're just gonna have to fucking cope. I'm sorry. But I released a video earlier that basically talked about my genuine take on it, and if you wanted to know what pulled me into the fray to comment on Bungie and Destiny 2. Now I've never played either of those games. The only thing I know about them is that they appear to be like a first person shooter MMO, and that's it. I mean, I don't know any more information about them than that. And you know, I'm kind of I'm but my genuine reaction to that news is, oh wow, it's a first person shooter MMO. Well, then it's dog shit because it's a first person shooter. Like, but you may be like sitting here like having like looking at me saying that the first person shooter genre is shit, and you might be asking me like, why do you fucking hate these games so fucking much? And it's like, in a perfect world where it wasn't, where there was enough room for both, I would be perfectly happy to leave alone. But I've harbored a grudge against the genre for quite a while now, because it's like 12 out of 12 months of the year, there's always a first person shooter. There always is. That's flavor of the month. They come out every month. There's another version of fucking Crisis, and it's not Crisis literally. It's just a very high end, very demanding game that practically demands literally the latest and greatest hardware, in the first person shooter space. And it's flavor of the month every month, month to month. Well, those of us that went over to the Linux side of the equation and started experimenting with trying to run Linux eventually found our way to Sediga and the WineX project back in the day. We finding ourselves in that project, we eventually learned that you could vote on what the title of they were going to work on. That they would then, if we the winner would basically get custom work put towards it. And every single month I remember voting for Final Fantasy 11 and then getting outvoted because everybody else that was part of that particular community wanted first person shooters. And if we had gotten work on Final Fantasy 11 early, we might have gotten support for it on Linux about 10 years before it actually showed up. But and I remember that. And then of course it turns into this And I don't know if you can actually make out that, but that's Dungeons and Dragons. That's the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which is the flat surface that my laptop now rests is on top of. And I got that because I had tracked down a local group that was playing together. And then, of course, everybody's schedule up and changed on me. And our group, my level 5 wizard just, went to shit. He's gone now. You know, like, I'm fucking pissed. I was doing okay, and the people we were playing with were actually pretty intelligent about how they went about doing things. So we were, we knew to cast web on things, and then, of course, firebolt, shit. It was pretty fun for a while, and now it's just all gone to one of the dogs and everything. And I guess you could say that I feel like I don't have anybody to play with because everybody else is off, in the distance playing games that really, like, I wish didn't even exist in the first place. And it's been like this for a long time. It's like I would run into people, and like every time I did, it would be like, oh, you like MMOs? And they'd be like, yeah, I do. Like, you want to play League of Legends with me? And it would be like, I want to fucking blow my brains out. And now it's the same fucking thing all over again. And I'd have to be all, I'm not into PvP content. It's not my thing. I kind of prefer playing up against the computer. It it's been that way for a while now. My reaction times are a bit slowed down. I mean, it doesn't really feel like an enjoyable experience getting ganked on by somebody that you just can't beat. I mean, like, I can at least manage the machines and beat them, and they're sufficiently challenging. They're not, it's not like they never, ever, ever actually managed to get one over on me, ever. But no, like, not interested in fighting you. It was one of the hard parts about playing World of Warcraft, because it would be like people would be constantly challenging you to a duel, and you'd be like, no thanks, 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 a whole bunch of fucking times, and it got tiring. Trying to be like, I'm here for the PvE content alone. I'm not interested in fighting you, bro. Sort of experience for the whole thing as you were playing your way through it, because of course, World of Warcraft has a huge and enormous PvP portion of the game that you don't have to participate in, but it's a pretty big thing for a lot of people and a big reason why they're into it. And of course, when you're just not interested in player versus player stuff, like, it's just like you start to kind of feel like, like you're going through this whole experience alone every time. And so, I remember, like, my friends being, like, really confused about why I went back to Final Fantasy 11. They were like, the content's old and stale. And it's like, for most people, but for me, when I went through it originally, I would just click through the content as quickly as possible. So I never even got to see what was going on in the story and the lore behind it when I was playing. I never did, because the whole thing was you were rushing back to your people so that you would be back, and that you didn't miss anything that they were discussing. So you just skip the dialogue as much as possible because of that, as you were playing. And I mean, I was not alone in that. And so going through it as a solo player, when they introduced the trust, enabled me to actually experience the fucking lore for the very first time. And I found that particular aspect of it refreshing. And so it was like, yeah, it's stale for you, not for me. It's not like we're all having the same simultaneous experience of the whole thing. You know, I mean, that was really difficult to explain to them, but it was so dumb. They were like, "No, it's old. It's not new." It's like, it's new for me, and that's all that matters. And it was like that whole experience. And so I didn't mind going back to Final Fantasy 11 at all. I found it quite enjoyable. I had a letter when I logged in from my ex, which was funny. It had been like 10 years since I'd ever actually interacted with her, and it was like, I went missing and she thought to actually go and look for me. That's refreshing. I mean, I'm glad, like somebody cared about me that much. And yet, when it comes to when it comes to this whole like first person shooter thing and why you would speak out and say something about how the whole genre is like of dog shit quality, and like it's because of shit like that. It's because of the personal grudge that I gained during Winex and the Winex funding as a donor to the whole project, and the fact that we did get voting rights, and then it became pointless because nobody else agreed. You know, they all wanted access to the same shitty first person shooter, and it was like every single month we lost by default because of course the first person shooters were capable of being flavor of the month and making a fucking game. Every fucking 4 weeks there was a new one, and it made you just have this pathological hatred for first person shooters because there was only enough room for one winner under that system. And then it spirals out into later life where it's just like you're looking at this and you're thinking, you know, today in the world of video games, I guess the whole thing is just now I'm partnered, right? I've got my Machiri and everything, and I love her and everything, but she's not totally and entirely into the same sort of stuff that I am and the same hobbies that I have. I mean, we have some overlap, but it's not, it's not entirely, and I love her to death, and she's, my favorite of all of my partners and everything and whatnot, but putting the responsibility to be your like basically everything on one person, just it's impractical, and I know that she can't live up to that, and that's not really, I don't expect her to be. And so it's like you're going to need other relationships, and so somebody to talk to about the anime that you watch, somebody to talk to about the video games you play, all of that would be pretty nice, because you can't, it's kind of like man can't survive on bread alone. We're a social species. We're not supposed to survive off having only a single fucking friend, and everything that, and especially, and particularly friends that, have the same sort of hobbies and interests that you do. And, unfortunately, like I'm kind of going through a time in my life where it's kind of like there is a dearth of people that have the same hobbies and interests, and it's a little bit depressing. So for that reason, and that kind of creates a neo hatred of the first person shooter genre. And the fact is that every time I run into somebody that seems kind of cool, and it's like we vibe and have the same hobbies, it's like, hey, you want to go play League of Legends with me? And it's like, oh, I'd rather watch grass grow. It's not fun. Like, and every time like I find somebody that is into music and is a music fan, it's like, no, I mean EBM. I don't mean EDM. I don't mean, when I say EB as in boy, I do mean B, not D. It's like, you signal your interest in industrial and Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor and the precursors and everything that led into Nine Inch Nails and inspired him, and all the VNV Nation and Assemblage 23 shit that was going on. And it's like that space is too confined. There's not enough of us, you know? There just is not. And so it's like my experience at this point, kind of feels like I'm kind of socially isolated, alone, and I don't have a lot of friends that are into exactly the same thing that I do, that I'm into. I mean, I have friends. I just don't have, friends that have similar interests. Other than, the one thing that seems to kind of keep us bound together is politics. That's the, that shared passion for left wing politics has cobbled all of us together. And I mean, I love their political takes and everything, but I've got this whole other side to my personality that I just can't indulge with a lot of them.